former Ford engineer has exposed a hidden problem in popular models that could cause serious accidents. He says the company knew about it, but chose to stay quiet to save money. This flaw affects millions of cars still on the road today, and even experienced mechanics are worried after hearing what he revealed. So, who is this mystery man dropping truth bombs on Ford? Meet Joe, a former senior engineer who spent over 2 decades at Ford Motor Company. And no, he's not just some guy who once held a wrench near a Ford Focus. Joe worked his way up from the shop floor to the engineering department, eventually leading critical design and safety review teams. He was in the trenches during the launch of some of Ford's biggest selling models. You name it, he's probably helped design or troubleshoot it. Joe's resume reads like a Ford history lesson, like the involvement in early F-Series developments, powertrain refinements, and even crash safety modules. He wasn't fetching coffee, he was the guy the execs called when something wasn't working. He knows how the gears turn, literally and figuratively. And let's be honest, when someone who's been inside the room says, "Hey, there's a real problem here," it's time to stop polishing the hood and start listening. Now, Joe isn't some bitter retiree trying to stir the pot for likes. He left the company on good terms. He's not hiding behind a Reddit username or filming exposé videos in a dark basement. He's speaking up because he genuinely believes people, especially folks who've trusted Ford for years, deserve to know what's really going on. And here's the interesting part. This isn't some niche, barely used part we're talking about. It's something that affects millions of vehicles, with real safety consequences. Joe didn't just blow the whistle. He rang the alarm bell loud enough to shake the garage door. So, why should we care what Joe says? Because while most of us were worrying about tire pressure and oil changes, he was inside the system, watching shortcuts being taken and warning signs being ignored. And now, he's finally ready to talk. So what exactly is this big, scary, fatal flaw that has everyone talking? According to Joe, the ex-Ford engineer, it all comes down to a design issue buried deep in the vehicle's electronic throttle control system, which tells your car how much to go when you press the gas pedal. Sounds simple, right? But here's the kicker. Ford allegedly cut a few corners in how this system talks to the engine's control unit. Instead of using a safer setup with backups, they chose a cheaper route that can just stop working. No warning, no noises, just dead silence. If you're into breakdowns like this, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss more car truths they'd rather keep buried. But think of this. Your coffee maker has a hidden timer that randomly shuts it off mid-brew. One day it's fine, and the next morning, it dies halfway through making your cup of joe. Annoying, sure. But now picture that concept in a 4,000-pound machine going 60 miles an hour. Not so funny anymore? For everyday drivers, especially older ones who rely on smooth, predictable performance, this isn't just a hiccup. This is a full-on sneeze attack during brain surgery. The kind of thing that could leave you stalled in traffic, stuck at intersections, or worse, completely vulnerable in high-speed situations. And here's the part that'll grind your gears. Repairing it isn't cheap. Dealerships might slap you with a bill north of $1,000 to replace a component that shouldn't have failed in the first place. That's not just frustrating. It's borderline disrespectful to loyal customers who've been buying Ford since disco was still cool. Joe says the flaw was known internally. People flagged it. Tests were run. But the decision makers opted to monitor the situation instead of fixing it early on. Translation? They crossed their fingers and hoped nobody would notice. Now, people are starting to notice, but unfortunately, some are realizing it while stuck on the side of the road. So, what happened to quality control? Well, in Ford's case, it looks like quality control has gone completely off the rails. In the past, quality control meant having expert teams meticulously inspect every single part that went into your car. People who could hear a strange noise in the engine and immediately identify the loose bolt without even opening the hood. But according to Joe, those days are long gone. Today, it's all about speed, spreadsheets, and cutting costs at every turn. Ford's internal motto might as well have been, if it's 95% okay, it's out the door. And the other 5%? Well, that's your problem. Joe described a system where engineers were pushed to hit deadlines at all costs. Meetings were less about fixing problems and more about how to make the problem look smaller on paper. Can we call that a customer inconvenience instead of a critical failure? Yeah, that kind of logic. It's the automotive version of putting duct tape on a leaky pipe and calling it modern plumbing. The flaw in the throttle system? Joe says it was flagged multiple times in internal audits. But quality control wasn't empowered to stop production. Instead, there was this underlying fear. If you delay the line, you cost the company. And nobody wanted to be that guy. So, the cars kept rolling out, flawed and all. What's worse is how customer complaints were handled. Rather than investigating the root of the issue, reports were often filed away under vague terms like driver error or intermittent malfunction. If you brought your car in and said, it stalled out of nowhere, you might be told to just keep an eye on it. And let's face it, most people over 50 aren't just joyriding. You've got groceries, appointments, and grandkids in the back seat. You don't need your vehicle deciding to take a nap mid-turn. But Ford's system, as Joe puts it, was more focused on not admitting fault than actually fixing the problem. So, where did things go wrong? Everywhere, from the test bench to the boardroom. And the scariest part? According to Joe, most of the people who did care about safety either got overruled or quietly reassigned. Out of sight, out of mind, until someone's stranded on the freeway. Here's where it gets even more maddening. According to Joe, the most dangerous thing at Ford wasn't the flaw itself. It was the attitude behind it. A culture that quietly whispered, we'll fix it later. Not out loud, of course, but in budget meetings and engineering huddles, that was the vibe. Short-term cost savings beat long-term safety every time. If you've ever duct taped a crack in your garden hose and said, I'll deal with that next weekend, congrats, you already understand Ford's internal repair strategy. The only difference is, when your garden hose gives out, you get wet. When this flaw shows up in a vehicle, it's more like a highway panic attack with bonus hazard lights. Joe says this fix-it-later mindset was baked into the process. When the engineers raised red flags, management often responded with phrases like, let's monitor that for now, they say, hoping it slides under the radar. We'll address it in the next model, or let's not cause a recall unless necessary, or let's hope nobody notices. And if that sounds familiar to folks who lived through the Pinto or Firestone tire scandals, you're not wrong. This isn't Ford's first rodeo when it comes to brushing potential disasters under the floor mat. What's worse is that this approach punished the people trying to do the right thing. Joe says colleagues who pushed too hard for fixes found themselves reassigned to lower priority projects or quietly phased out of meetings. Meanwhile, the yes-men and spreadsheet warriors climbed the ranks. And let's be real. For drivers in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, this isn't just about bad business. It's personal. These are the folks who grew up in a Ford family. Who remembers when a pickup could survive an apocalypse? They're not looking for heated massage seats. They want something reliable that won't shut down when they're halfway across town. But what have they been getting instead? A corporate shrug and a promise to get around to it later. Unfortunately, later may come too late for some. Now, let's talk about the real-world consequences of this fix-it-later mentality. And trust me, it's not just about mechanics shaking their heads in the garage. This is the stuff that happens to you and me on the road. Joe's not just telling us about an engineering flaw. He's also sharing stories from real Ford owners who've experienced the nightmare firsthand. People who've trusted Ford for decades, only to have their vehicles randomly stop working at the most inconvenient moments. And, let's face it, those moments never happen when you're parked in the driveway, sipping your coffee, right? Oh no, it's always when you're on a highway, in the middle of nowhere, or dare I say it, on a road trip to see the grandkids. Take one story Joe mentioned, a retired couple in their 70s driving their Ford SUV across the state to visit family. One minute, they're cruising along, laughing at the radio. The next minute, the car suddenly loses power and coasts to a stop. No warning, no blinking lights, just nothing. They're stuck on the side of the road for hours, waiting for a tow truck. Not exactly the retirement road trip they'd planned, right? Or how about this one? A senior driver, just trying to get to the grocery store, experiences the same issue. In this case, the car cuts out on a busy intersection, leaving the driver stuck in the middle of traffic with cars honking behind them. Not only is it terrifying, but it's also dangerous, especially for older drivers who may not be as quick to react. These aren't just one-off stories. They're part of a growing trend that Joe's been hearing about more and more. And what's Ford's response? If they respond at all, it's usually a "we're aware of the issue" and a very long wait for a fix that might come eventually. For people in their 50s and beyond, this isn't just a frustrating inconvenience. It's a safety issue. It's about being left vulnerable when you least expect it, all because a company chose to save a buck instead of taking responsibility for their products. And the sad truth? It doesn't stop there. Some drivers have been forced to spend thousands of dollars on repairs that might not even fix the root cause of the issue. Talk about throwing good money after bad. Now you're probably thinking, okay, so we've got a serious problem. What's Ford doing to fix it? Well, here's where it gets a little frustrating. After Joe's revelations hit the press, many people assumed Ford would step up, admit the mistake, and start issuing recalls left and right. But, spoiler alert, that's not quite what happened. Ford, like many big corporations, tried to downplay the situation as best they could. Sure, they released a statement acknowledging the issue, but instead of offering immediate fixes, they pushed for customer assistance programs, vouchers for some repairs, depending on the model. You know, like offering a Band-Aid for a broken leg. Even the so-called assistance programs turned out to be more hassle than help. Some owners had to fight tooth and nail just to get basic repairs approved, while others were brushed off with claims that the issue wasn't common enough to trigger a recall, because apparently, a car stalling in the middle of traffic isn't considered a serious enough safety concern. What's worse is the lack of urgency. Joe points out that Ford didn't exactly race to make meaningful changes. Instead, they took the classic corporate route, put a few Band-Aids on it, hope the problem fades, and let's talk about it later. For those waiting for that later, it's been a frustrating journey. And for the older drivers who are still loyal to the brand, hoping for a quick resolution, it's downright disappointing. This isn't just about getting your car fixed. It's about trusting a brand that has been part of the family for years, and now that trust is being put to the test. So, what is Ford really doing? The truth is, they're doing just enough not to get sued, and just not enough to actually fix the problem. For many, it's an ongoing game of waiting for the company to take responsibility. And as we know, waiting on a corporation to do the right thing often feels like waiting for the next bus. It might never show up. So, after all this, what are we left with? A corporation dragged its feet, and customers left wondering where the help went. But here's the good news. You don't have to sit back and wait for Ford to come to the rescue. If you're an older driver or anyone relying on a Ford vehicle, there are steps you can take to protect yourself and your investment. First things first, if your car's been acting up, don't just ignore it. Take it to a trusted mechanic who knows these models and can diagnose potential issues early. Be sure to keep a record of every repair and complaint. This could be helpful if you need to escalate things later. Joe's advice? If you're not getting the help you need from Ford, don't be afraid to file a formal complaint with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It's a bit of a process, but it could help shine a light on the issue, especially if more and more people start reporting similar problems. If you're dealing with a major issue, like your car losing power while driving, don't hesitate to get in touch with a lawyer. That's right. This isn't just about fixing the throttle system. It's about holding Ford accountable. A lawyer can help you explore options for damages, especially if you've experienced something like an accident or close call due to the faulty system. After all, you shouldn't have to risk your safety just because a company decided to skip a few steps in quality control. And for those who might be considering whether it's time to part ways with their Ford, Joe suggests looking into whether your vehicle qualifies for a recall or if you can get a replacement under any of the customer assistance programs Ford has put in place. Keep in mind, your safety and peace of mind should always come first. In the end, it's about knowing your rights and fighting for them. While Ford may drag its feet, you don't have to. You've worked hard for your car and for your retirement, so it's time to make sure that car works just as hard for you. Ford is facing a major issue with its throttle control system, putting millions of drivers at risk. The company's response has been underwhelming, leaving many questioning their trust in a brand they've relied on for years. Joe, a former Ford engineer, has exposed a troubling culture of cutting corners and avoiding accountability. For those in their 50s and beyond, it's more than just a mechanical failure. It's a betrayal of trust. If you're a loyal Ford customer impacted by this, don't stay silent. Take action, hold them accountable, and prioritize your safety on the road. What do you think about the shocking flaw revealed by the ex-Ford engineer? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this deep dive, don't forget to like and share. Curious about the worst cars ever made? Check out our previous video. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos of cars and much more. For more content like this, click on the video showing on your screen right now. Take care.